Connecticut has a racial profiling law that some lawmakers say most police departments are simply not following. The Racial Profiling Prohibition Act has been on the books since 1999, and part of it requires departments to track the racial breakdown of every traffic stop and send that data to the state. In light of a recent Department of Justice report that found East Haven police routinely discriminate against Latinos, some lawmakers are urging the governor to now make sure that every department is collecting that data. Let's first take a look at the DOJ report and reaction that sparked another look at Connecticut's law.
There's no references to any officers. There's no references to any complainant. All there are is innuendos stating that things could have been wrong.
Mayor Joseph Maturo is maybe understandably defensive of East Haven police officers, but the report is a bit more than innuendo. The Deputy Assistant Attorney General for the DOJ's Civil Rights Division says their investigation was exhaustive, finding that in East Haven, Latinos are disproportionately targeted for traffic stops, and once they are treated harsher than non-Latino drivers. That half of the traffic stops by at least one officer and a third from some others were Latinos in a town where Latinos are only 15% of the population.
The pattern or practice of discriminatory policing that we observed is deeply rooted in the police department's culture and substantially interferes with the ability of the department to deliver services to the entire East Haven community.
The investigation began in September 2009 following complaints by Latinos and Latino business owners that they were being harassed by police. Father James Manship was arrested trying to videotape the arrest of a Latino man inside a local store. Today, he and the leader of his pastoral council say the report gives them vindication and maybe hope, even after hearing of the mayor's reluctance, even after Maturo, who just won the mayor's seat a few weeks ago, brought Chief Leonard Gallo back after almost 2 years on leave pending the investigation.
I also really do believe, I am a part of this church and a leader of this church, I really do believe that people can change. So I certainly hope that the mayor will think about this carefully and consider it.
If East Haven doesn't take recommendations for programs like training in non-biased policing, investigating officers, and improving communications with minorities, the Attorney General could file a lawsuit, or the U.S. could suspend or terminate certain federal funding to the town. Former Mayor April Capone said today this report is just the quote-unquote opening attraction.
This has the potential to cost the taxpayers of East Haven millions and millions of dollars.
That is the situation in East Haven, and what has the governor and some lawmakers pledging to make sure police departments are now tracking stops. Representative Kelvin Roldan is spearheading that effort. Representative, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I guess first let's start off with what's your reaction to hearing about what's happening in East Haven?
Well, first of all, let's talk about the facts. This is an act that was passed in 1999 by the state legislature. We are looking at this 12 years later. We're not looking at this a year later, 2 years later. We're looking at this 12 years later. Had the data been collected over that period of time, we could have probably prevented a significant investigation by the Department of Justice, the United States Department of Justice, and could potentially, in the long run, save taxpayers a significant amount of money, because I have to believe that there will be significant indictments in this criminal investigation, which will cost the East Haven taxpayers and the Connecticut taxpayers a significant amount of dollars.
Well, why wasn't it being enforced, though? Did you all know that it wasn't being collected, or whose job was it to say, hey, where's all this data that the police departments are supposed to be
Well, police
in?
departments across the state have said on many occasions that it is difficult to collect this data. They have come up with a significant number of excuses for it. But for 12 years later to suggest that only 27 departments have been compliant with the state law, obviously there is a significant issue here. And it's an issue that really should be addressed, and it's an issue that the governor has made a significant statement in terms of, hey, it's time to change the way we go about this.
So you want them to, what sorts of information would you like to know?
Well, when a police officer stops someone, there should be probable cause, and probable cause should not be found after the fact. And on this instance in East Haven, it is the case that probable cause was in some cases found after the fact. In fact, there was no probable cause in most occasions. And in fact, one officer had a stop rate of stopping Latinos in a 40.5% rate. This is one individual. Now, when you look at the whole totality of this, we're talking about a stop rate in East Haven of something like almost 20% of just Latinos in a town that has significantly less than that. We're talking about a single-digit population of Latinos
Right.
in that town.
Right, and the collection of data certainly would have signaled, hey, wait a minute, something's going on here.
Absolutely. If you look at the history of this, and if you look at what is necessary here, is about collecting data and analyzing the data on a constant basis, as the law says. On an annual basis, this data is supposed to be collected. On an annual basis, this data is supposed to be analyzed. If this had been the case, Connecticut would not have this black eye, which says that in one police department, probably a few bad apples have been targeting Latinos in illegal profiling stops.
So how much do you think it would cost to enforce this law and to make the report and all that?
Well, initially, it would have been a cost of probably $500,000 to implement the law in the first place. On an ongoing basis, it's probably going to cost about $200,000 to $300,000 a year to collect the data, analyze the data, and provide the reports necessary so that this doesn't continue. Now,
do we even know who would do that? I mean, do we have someone who would be capable of analyzing the information?
well, so the law states that the African American Commission is supposed to do this. Now, they don't have the ability to do this on an ongoing basis. It should really be the executive branch. It should really be the OPM office, Office of Policy and Management in the governor's office, to look at this and really provide some direction and some leadership on this issue of making sure that illegal profiling is not going on in the state.
But I know that OPM has said that they don't want to do it, right?
Well, you know, perhaps that could be the position. However, the governor has made a very significant statement in saying, hey, this is Connecticut. I was a mayor of Stamford. I did not tolerate this in Stamford. I am not going to tolerate this while I am governor of the state. And I applaud his efforts in this regard. So at the end of the day, OPM should be leading this effort, and that is what I'm going to support, and some of my colleagues are going to support. Now, the law may not be perfect. It is 12 years later, and we're going to do our job to make sure that we address the issues that are on the law. But the bottom line is, this is Connecticut. We should not be committing illegal profiling acts that lead to civil rights violations across the state.
You said that, you know, it is 12 years later. Perhaps the law needs to be readjusted, looked at again. I mean, are there elements of it that you think need to be amended, or?
Well, for example, I think there's an issue of capacity here. So, you know, some of the chiefs have said that there needs to be uniform reporting. Well, there needs to be someone who looks at and says, well, this is the way that you provide these reports, and this is the way that you submit these reports to the state, so that you can actually be comparing apples to apples. Now, at the end of the day, the role of the state and my role and my colleagues is to protect the rights of residents of the state of Connecticut. This is something that has been going on for quite some time now, and it's something that really needs to be corrected. And frankly speaking, if I were in the position of taking a look at this from the perspective of East Haven, I would be taking this Department of Justice investigation very, very, very seriously.
Yeah. I mean, it also raises the question, because we haven't been collecting data. So here was a town that all of a sudden was forced to take data, whether or not it's happening in other towns.
Well, we don't know. We haven't been collecting the data. I mean, I am a Latino lawmaker. I grew up in the city of Hartford. I grew up in a housing project. You know, in the last 10 years, I have been the victim of profiling in several towns across the state of Connecticut. However, because the data hasn't been collected, because only 27 police departments across the state are actually in compliance with this law, it is very difficult to say who is actually doing their job, and is illegal profiling taking place in other places across the state. We just don't know. So
I know the governor has said he agrees it's not appropriate that the law has not been followed by these police departments. He says it's going to get followed. But realistically, I mean, you know how things go up at the Capitol. I mean, so we're going to have to find who's going to collect the data, who's going to make the report. I mean, is this going to be something that we can do expeditiously, or?
Well, we're going to have a legislative session, and I can tell you that my commitment and the commitment of my colleagues, representatives as well as senators who are behind this issue, is to ensure that the rights of Connecticut residents are protected. The civil rights violations that have occurred in East Haven are unacceptable. We are going to do whatever is necessary to ensure that this law is actually enacted and implemented in the right way.
All right. Thanks a lot. Representative Kelvin Roldan, thanks for being here today and telling us about your issue. Coming up next, a look at what kinds of questions public utility regulators should be asking about the NU-NSTAR merger.